problem. And I say that because the woman has sought medical help, and daktari limwambia wewe uko sawa, but the man has refused to even acknowledge or even show up.
I hear where you're coming from, and I think your question has, I think, 2 or 3 arms, if I can put it that way. Number one, the discussion about men talking about infertility and their problems, and here we are talking just before we came onto the show that society has sort of socialized us not to talk about these issues.
Yes.
Say, for example, when we are growing up and we are playing football, and you fall down, you scratch your knee, or whatever it is, and you want to cry. Men don't cry. So we grow up with this mentality that men have to face everything, without showing any emotions. So you are a macho man. Even if there are issues like this, don't bring them up, because when you bring them up, you're showing that you're weak.
Yeah. We want you to call in. The number is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. Uno Mike here will be monitoring the phone lines. So just let us know if you have any particular questions. And of course, this hour, there's a number of things we want to address. Daktari already talked about the statistics. That was one of the issues we wanted to address. And he said that close to 40% of men may have an issue with infertility that needs to be checked. Close to 40%.
And I think that was in the African continent.
That was in the African context.
But
yes. Now we will also talk about what remedies are available there for people who have problems, and maybe messaging, maybe what media needs to do in order to message this correctly for men to understand, the adversity of this. But to get us back on Daktari, we're talking about right before the break, is infertility a random occurrence? Is it genetic? Or are there other lifestyle issues or habits that may lead to infertility? Or is it a combination of all the three?
It can be a combination of all of them.
Okay.
If I can start by possible causes of infertility. Remember we talked about the ejaculate having issues.
Yes.
So you may have issues with the numbers of the sperm in an ejaculate. You may have issues with the motility of the sperm. You may have an issue with the morphology, that is the number of normal forms. So that already is a problem. What can lead to this can also be quite a number of issues. For example, some of the medications that we use, medications, for example, for high blood pressure, medications for diabetes, can actually have an effect on, first of all, in the function itself. That is the function of intercourse, and also may have a secondary effect on the quality of the sperms that we get.
Okay.
May have an issue. We talked about the tubes where the sperm pass through. There can be a blockage. So if there is a blockage, the sperm will not come out. And you may have an issue with the undescended testicles. Remember, we talked about that young man, that the parents should make it a habit when they're washing him to actually check and see whether the testicles are where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. And is that a random occurrence, or is it genetic, or is it just...
No, that is random. That is
okay.
basically random.
Okay.
Genetic actually is a small percentage. And as I said, remember I talked about mucoviscidosis, which happens in certain communities, especially when they get married to each other. So they pass on this hereditary problem. And very, very prevalent amongst the Jewish community.
The Jewish community.
Yes.
Because of marrying from within.
Because of intermarriage.
Yeah.
A small problem, what you call not really fragile, where you have the Y chromosome, where a small fraction of that chromosome is actually what you call a microdeletion. But that one also is very rare, and it's also a genetic problem. But that one can be sorted out later on. Now, we come back to the issue of the testicles again. You may have the testicles which are twisted. It can be twisted, what you call torsion, of the testicle, can be one or on both sides, and if that blood supply is actually sort of depleted, the testicles will die.
Do you mean twisted as in it was already twisted from birth, or twisted through an accident, or twisted
in, you know, when you in adulthood, for example?
Okay.
It usually happens when in adulthood. Rarely does it happen in childhood, and that can be because of different reasons. You talked about an accident, injury. We talked, gentlemen tunapenda rugby, you like football sometimes.
Contact sports,
karate, and so on.
Yeah.
Sometimes when the guys are standing in front of the goal.
Or free kick.
Yeah, a free kick, and that ball hits, those hands which have been...
The jewels.
And then you can see the guy rolling on the ground, and you can actually feel the pain on his behalf.
Right.
So that cricket as well. Hockey sometimes, and so on. So that can also, injuries basically to the groin. You may have diseases as well, infectious diseases, viral diseases. Remember when you're growing up and your friend has swollen, the jaw is swollen, mumps. Mumps in childhood is okay, but when it is for you get it in adulthood, it spoils everything. So there'll be no production of sperm at all. So we have to be careful. That is why when you see a young man having, in childhood, you are encouraged to take your child there so that he can also be infected. And then he has a lifelong, protection.
Immunity,
protection.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But if you're not infected and you're not vaccinated, and you do get, contact with mumps in adulthood, unfortunately, it will lead to what you call otitis, mumps otitis, infection of the testicles, and that can actually ruin completely your chances of getting pregnant. Of fertility. Other infections as well. Gonorrhea. We don't talk about gonorrhea these days. We don't talk about syphilis. They also are a source of infection and a cause of infertility. We actually don't even talk about chlamydia. Talking about infertility, chlamydia. Chlamydia is a silent killer in the sense that it does not have any symptoms at all. And again, it's an STI, sexually transmitted infection, and it will affect the tubes of the lady. It will also affect the tubes of the gentleman as well.
Okay.
Now, we'll go into other issues. Accidents, for example. If you have an accident and your spinal cord is injured, obviously there won't be a chance of you having an erection and having an ejaculate. Tumors, different tumors in different places. Talk about medications, for example. Talk about chemotherapy, radiotherapy as well. Some professions as well. What professions are we talking about here? Guys who are truck drivers, long distance truck drivers. So they are seated 8 hours, 10 hours, 14 hours.
Yes.
Even if there is a break in between, but they are seated, and that engine produces heat, and that heat can actually get to the jewels, as you said, and it can have an effect on the quality of the sperm. People who work in places where there are high temperatures, in bakeries, for example, in foundry works where they produce glass and so on, that heat can also have an effect.
Okay.
I think somebody asked about the laptop. It has actually been proven that when you take that laptop and put it on your laps and you walk away, that heat from the fan, actually, we remember in the scrotum, the temperature is slightly lower than in the general body by about 1 degree. So if you increase that to the temperature of the normal body, or even it's slightly higher, then obviously
Unawa soldiers.
Okay, so if you're using laptops, you want to place them on a table or place them on a surface?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Where there is no contact.
Okay. Now there's also other lifestyle issues that people have been asking about. Smoking, alcohol.
Very good.
Bangi.
Very good.
Mira.
Very good. Very good. Now, I have seen, the other day I read in the newspaper that Germany wants to actually legalize marijuana. In the Netherlands,
Maryland. We are voting on it on the ballot on November 8th. Yeah. In fact, maybe this might influence some opinions depending on what you're going to say.
Okay.
Yeah. Edibles.
Let's start with edibles.
By the way, kuna story ya edibles. Tulipewa. Kuna mtu alikuwa naona. What do you call that guy? The agent of
Malakul Maut.
Malakul Maut.
Yes.
Alikuwa namuona. Yeah. I'm not pointing and identifying who it is. All I'm saying is kuna mtu aliona Malakul Maut. But carry on, sir. Carry on.
Now, if we start with the cigarette smoke, cigarette smoke has about 2,000 to 3,000 chemicals. 2,000 to 3,000 chemicals. And some of those chemicals are actually go and displace the elements that are needed in the production of sperm or even in the motility of the sperm. For example, zinc is replaced by something else. So the sperm actually don't swim the way they're supposed to swim. Zinc is very, very important in the mechanism of swimming of the sperm. So if you're a heavy smoker, that is going to be a huge, huge challenge to your fertility. Apart from that, some chemicals like selenium, they push away selenium from the system, and the quality of the sperm is poor, and so on and so forth. Bang is even worse. Marijuana, weed is even worse. Apart from it affecting your brain, it will affect drastically the quality of the sperm that we see. Talk about lifestyle issues. Whether you're smoking, of course, the foods that we eat. Diet is very, very important. We have, I think in the US, I think it could probably even be worse. We have reached a place whereby we are less mobile, we walk less, we do less exercise, and we travel more by vehicle. Yeah. So like in the US, you have very long, distances from where you live to the store or the supermarkets. So what you do? Hop in a car. When you're going to work, hop in a car. So you actually don't have that time to burn that energy, as it were.
Some people even to the mailbox.
Even to the mailbox,
they'll drive.
Yeah. So that becomes a challenge. With the time we accumulate this fat, most of the time, the gentlemen, we have a public opinion, quote unquote.
I don't know why he's looking at me, but in his heart.
And the ladies also. So when it comes now to bedroom issues, it becomes a challenge. So if you have a public opinion, and we like our women who are well endowed, so sometimes it becomes a challenge. Mzee afiki mali anatakiwa kufika. So, and even the intercourse itself becomes a challenge. It becomes a job which you don't want to do because it's difficult, number one. You are challenged, physically and so on. So that contributes to actually infertility, in a secondary way. Talk about drinking. It is not the drinking per se, but it is what comes after the drinking. In some places, they say you drink 1 bottle, 2 bottles of beer, it's not a problem. But when you drink 3, 4, 5, X number of bottles of beer or shots of spirits, the inebriation that comes with it makes you not make right decisions. That is number one. Yeah. You end up in bed with some people in the morning, and you don't know what has happened. And you don't know, and that is, by the way, it works both ways for the gentlemen and for the ladies. Yeah. The ladies is actually even worse these days, because what has come out is that what the men can do,
women can do better.
We can do better.
Yeah.
So
that was the motto of my high school.
It's the motto of your high school. I had a patient who came to see me, a lady, and as we were talking, one of the questions actually I asked is, do you smoke? She said no. Do you drink? She said yes. I said, okay, what do you drink? She said, I drink a bottle. I said, well, I was thinking it's about a bottle of wine, which in itself is a lot, by the way. Okay. So I asked, a bottle of what? And she says, a bottle of Johnny Walker.
What?
Mzinga. And then I ask,
I'm with Dr. over here.
And then Mzinga. So you drink 1 bottle of Johnny Walker? I said yes. I said, over what period? He said, on Saturday night. So I go out, I drink a bottle of Johnny Walker. Is it 1 liter or is 7? I don't know. Whatever it is, it is a lot. So, when you drink such a huge amount of alcohol, number one, it's a problem to the body to actually, digest it, And then apart from that, the effects are horrible.
Yeah.
So
the liver.
It's the liver. And then obviously the decisions again, the decisions we talked about.
Yeah.
So I told her, you have to really prioritize what you want. If you want to have a baby, you have to stop drinking 1 bottle of Johnny Walker on Saturday. She never came back.
Well.
So there we go. and so on and so forth. So it's a huge array of things that we have started doing or things that are happening that we do, which will have a direct effect.
And you haven't talked about Mira. There was also Mira.
Mira, yes.
Before you address Mira, I had my name being called out.
No.
So let me address that.
Uh-huh.
I'm in agreement with Daktari. A bottle
of Johnny Walker
in one night.
Yeah.
That is mother than you.
That's
I know,
crazy.
that's too much.
No.
Yeah.
Even me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
By the way, okay, hold on.
Oh, you can.
But I know.
Yeah.
No. And I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And you see, he's talking about 1 liter.
Yeah.
In one night.
That's too much.
Kuna watu, there are some people who are 4-cylinder, V6,
Yeah.
V8,
Uh-huh.
kuna V12. Some people out there are like a Boeing 747.
Okay.
Consumption,
Yeah.
aina ngori.
Lakini 1 liter is still a lot
That's a
per
lot.
night.
But in context, if you haven't, it is a lot. And I'll tell you from Kenya, it is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. Because if you can do that, you can down one. Like if you have a 1 liter and you're amongst friends, that's different. But if you're solo, 1 liter.
And you down it, there's a problem.
Maybe
There's a problem.
Maybe the friends are also downing 1 liter as well.
Maybe, but we're talking about this one.
Oh, this one, you're saying if friends are sharing.
If friends are sharing,
Okay.
that one liter over there and is our. But
Furaha kulewa na marafiki.
iyo sasa.
I
1.1 liter.
You know what I think? I
yes.
think she lied to you.
No.
Let me say this.
Yes.
I think she said she only pinned it on Saturday night because I don't think you can drink that much and not drink any other day.
Let me tell you.
That
You'll
is-
be very surprised.
You'll be
No.
surprised.
You'll be very surprised. Yes.
So you can
surprised.
just dedicate
Yeah. Let me. No.
Saturday.
You can say Sato.
Yeah.
Mtachafua. Wacha nikwambie.
Alafu na detox wiki mzima.
Yes. It is a possibility.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
We're
Mira.
not saying that it won't happen. It has never happened, but we also cannot say
It is not a possibility.
exactly.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the other
Yeah.
thing, why would she actually say, I drink?
'Cause
Why
that's
would
a
she lie
lot.
to
I'm
me?
like,
Why
I'm,
would she
I'm,
lie to me?
I'm thinking maybe she did it over the weekend.
In one sitting, even me sometimes I'll say because I was called out.
Yeah.
If I have like a 750,
Yeah. You finished. by yourself.
nafika nane inaanza is creeping 3/4 empty.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Washeke just said, as you read, many Kenyans are functioning alcoholics and don't even acknowledge it.
There you go.
100%.
True.
All right. Yeah, that's for another show
Yes.
altogether.
1.75
But
iliangushwa, but not
yeah,
by me.
Yeah,
but by me. But
but
I won't
let's
say
get
anything.
back to Mira.
Mira.
Mogoka.
Yeah.
Kangeta.
Yes.
Giza.
Hizo giza sijui ni gani.
So what is that?
Eh?
How do you know these things?
Wacha mse wa edibles atuambie. Umse wa edibles.
No people.
Umse wa edibles. I mean, he gave a story about
Eh?
edibles. Watuambie. Kangeta. Atinatwaje?
Kuna Kangeta. Kangeta is actually a part of Meru. That's where that Mira comes from. It's called Kangeta. Ni miti refu hizo hapo. Alafu kuna Giza. Giza ni fupi. Wani kama maini.
You
Hiyo
see
hapo-
darkness.
Hiyo hapo kila. Yani
You see
hiyo
darkness.
hapo hiyo iwachi dent mdomoni. Alafu saa kuna ile ya
What does that
hustlers.
even mean?
Yeah.
Kuna ile ya hustlers, people on the ground. Mogoka.
Yeah.
Mogox.
Now,
Yeah.
with Mira, Mogoka, umesema Kangeta na
Giza.
Giza.
Na Asli.
Giza. Na
Asli pia.
Asli.
Ziko nyingi.
Number one,
Jesu.
the mechanism of addiction is the same because they are addictive.
Yes.
I had a couple who came to see me, and the wife was absolutely distressed. Anasema mume wangu ikifika Friday anapotea
Yes.
mpaka Monday,
Super addictive.
na anaenda kumtafuta huyu yuko wapi. So it's an addiction, and that addiction pulls you away from what you're supposed to do. That is
Yes,
number one.
absolutely.
We don't have a very clear biochemical mechanism how it affects fertility directly.
Okay.
But the fact that you are not where you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to do in order to have that family, that can be a mechanism of infertility itself. Ukienda Nairobi West, it's a place Nairobi West.
I grew up in
Nairobi West.
It's so painful. I grew up in Nairobi West.
Yes.
So
Nairobi West ukipita hapo on Friday afternoon kuanzia around 11 o'clock. I used to go because I used to work in Nairobi West quite a lot. Every Friday from around 11, 12, magari zimepangana hapo.
Yep, that's the center.
That is the center. So there is a problem with that, but I think the problem is basically the same mechanism of addiction, just like you can get addicted to other things, and then you are not be just like that case that I mentioned. Mzee anapotea kutoka Friday mpaka Monday.
Yeah.
Na mama ndiye anaenda kumtafuta. Aende kazini.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Because
and it's getting worse.
Some of the argument against this that people bring in, because remember, Miraa is kind of like a cash crop. So it's very controversial.
Just like coca is a cash crop.
It's very controversial when you bring it up. Some people will say, lakini Wameru wako na watoto wengi sana.
Wameru wanauza sana.
Yeah.
Wanauza sana. I don't know. That one is very difficult for me to say. But as I said, direct biochemical mechanism, we haven't really established it.
Okay, not established. So it's still out there, but of course it's an addiction, and it takes you away from what you're supposed to be.
We have a caller, but I'm preparing the caller
Can I ask a
to
question?
prepare your questions.
Okay.
I'll pick up your line ending with 7560. Once the questions are done and asked, then I'll pick your call.
All right,
Okay.
caller, be ready
So-
with the question.
Caller, be ready.
We
Por
have
favor.
this question from Nyadimo. Says, Doctor, please kindly clarify. According to some literature sources, uncircumcised men have an increased risk of HPV infection, particularly because of the virus being able to thrive in the foreskin. Is this information valid?
I'm not very sure about that, because when you look at the Western society, most men are not circumcised.
Yeah, Germany especially. Yeah.
Most Europeans are not circumcised.
They're not circumcised.
And
Yeah.
we don't have a higher incidence of of HPV there. Maybe because again the knowledge is more available, they are more compliant, and they have the vaccines and so on.
Okay.
So that one I'm not very sure about. I can't give you a direct answer, yes or no.
That was a question.
Okay, and then Diaspora Youth Caucus also had a question. But I think let's pick the caller first.
Let's.
And for those who wanna ask a question, the number to call 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. We want especially the men to call.
The men will not call. But it's out. We'll ask the questions on their behalf. 7560. Por favor. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, and please tell us your name and where you're calling from. We can't hear the caller. I think maybe there's an issue.
Hold on,
caller.
Caller, are you there?
Are you there?
I'd picked up the wrong.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you loud
Okay,
and clear.
all right.
Loud and clear.
Tell us who you are and where you're calling from, and then ask your question.
Or questions.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
This is Facebook name Adhiambo Das, government names Rosalind O, WhatsApp name Black Pearl,
Okay.
Black
and
Pearl.
OneMicShow Viola Davis.
Okay. All right, Miss Viola.
Viola.
Sasa, the doctor has seemed to answer most of the questions I actually had prepared. But I just want to know what his opinion is. Basically, I'm coming to him based on previous broadcast on the Spice FM show that he did in Kenya. So number one, I want to know, does he have any statistics on how COVID has affected fertility or infertility? And I'm asking this question based on the fact that I don't know about Kenya, but if you all recall, in the States here, there was a lot of deaths following COVID. And then we would get all these other reports daily almost about how women especially complained how COVID affected their cycles. From a personal experience, I had COVID in May of 2022, and I didn't see my period from April until July. And when I did see it, it was weird. So my question is, do you have any statistics on if and how much COVID affected fertility or infertility, and especially the men? I have more questions, but I don't know if I should roll them together.
Let's start with this one. Let's start with this one, and then
can I clarify what do you mean by weird?
Okay, so all my HIPAA information is gonna be out here, but basically, I used to have a regular period. Now I'm an older chick. Okay, let's just get that right. I'm over 35. I'm over 45, but I'm not yet menopausal. When I got COVID, I didn't see my period, and then when I got it, I got less than half a teaspoon. And it was not the right color.
All right. Thank you so much. Just stay put at this with your other questions.
After this, then
and then we'll come back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Viola, for that question. No, in Kenya we don't have those statistics. Neither do I have those statistics. I remember I mentioned about the conference I attended in California. Actually, one of the sessions was actually dedicated to that, trying to analyze and look at the effect of COVID on fertility or infertility, for that matter. Now, having said that, I've had, now that you mentioned it, I think about 3 or 4 patients who came to me, and they mentioned exactly what you're saying, that once they had they got infected with COVID, their periods actually changed, and I think 2 or 3 of them said the periods, first of all, they took longer to come. That is one. And then after that, the characteristic of the period was completely different. They were heavier and clottier, which had never happened before. So there could be some inference, because now what I'm saying is anecdotal evidence. It's not evidence which is taken from different places. But I think, and several papers have actually been published on that in that respect, where they noticed that there was a slight change, or even there's, as you said, weird change in the periods. So yes, there is a very high possibility that post-COVID can be issues with the periods. In the men, again, this is what we are talking about. Men don't come out. Men don't talk about these issues.
We need to talk about that.
And they will not come out and talk about that. And by the way, it is not only Kenyan men or African men, for that matter.
Yeah.
I attended a conference. I think it was in Austria. I think 2 years ago, and there was a professor from Denmark, I think, if I remember well. And we had this session again about male infertility. And what he came out, he said, look, I went on a show just like this one. I sent an anonymous message. I said, let men call and talk about any issues of infertility that they have, and they don't have to identify themselves. We don't want them to actually to give their names. They just call and say, look, I am a gentleman. I'm so many years, and this is the issues I'm having. And guess what? Not one man called. And that was in Denmark, which is a developed country. I was sort of happy in a way, if you can put it that way, and I lifted up my hand and I said, so in this respect, we are the same. Whether you are in developing countries or whether you are in developed countries, men don't want to talk about issues of infertility.
Okay.
Hey,
all
okay.
right. So
Viola Davis,
Viola,
carry on.
You had another question.
Can I have, yes. So my other question is, what are some of the attempts being made? Again, I'm asking these questions based on his previous broadcast. So I kind of had listened a little bit. So what are some of the attempts being made to bring men to the table in relation to traditions and religion that propagate the mindset that mwanamke ndiye shida? Are they having are these conversations producing results? So, for example, what I mean is, things like the doctor had talked about solutions to this infertility, one of them being surrogacy. Kenyans and many Kenyans don't even believe that another woman can carry for you, or you can use another woman's eggs or sperm or that kind of thing. Yani, lazima mwanamke ndiye abebe. So is your organization, is your team, are you with your patients having these conversations? Are they producing results? And what do you think are some of the things we can do as a society to kind of bring men to the table? I think bringing them to the table is going to be hard, but this has to be done because I have family members who are actually going through this, where the male is the actual problem. And I say that because the woman has sought medical help, and daktari limwambia wewe uko sawa, but the man has refused to even acknowledge or even show up.
I hear where you're coming
consultation.
from, and I think your question has, I think, 2 or 3 arms, if I can put it that way. Number one, the discussion about men talking about infertility and their problems, and here we are talking just before we came onto the show that society has sort of socialized us not to talk about these issues.
Yes.
Say, for example, when we are growing up and we are playing football and you fall down, you scratch your knee, or whatever it is, and you want to cry. Men don't cry. So we grow up with this mentality that men have to face everything, without showing any emotions. So you are a macho man. Even if there are issues like this, don't bring them up, because when you bring them up, you're showing that you're weak.
Yeah.
A man cannot be weak. A man is not allowed to be weak. That is the society. Of course, this is starting to change, but is it changing drastically? I don't think so. We are still there. Number 2, we are wired completely differently, men and women. Women will talk about everything personal, very, very openly, with a close friend, or sometimes even with somebody they just met just accidentally. Men, it is impossible, absolutely impossible, even with your very close friend, to say, you know what, I'm having issues, and these are the issues that we are having. It is because you may find your friend saying, you know what, kwani hiyo kazi inakushinda, si tukusaidie. It may be in jest, but it ends up actually having the negative effect. What is society doing? The fact that we are here in the studio talking about male infertility, I think it's a big step. That is number 1. There are a lot of men who are out there who are listening, lakini wanayamaza tu, and which is typical of us. When there is such a problem, unasikia tu, what are they talking about? I'll pick 1 or 2, 3, 4 gems, and then I'll go and think about them, and then see what to do about it later on. The other issue you raised is the issue of surrogacy and the issue of using donor eggs and donor sperm. For your information, this is something which is being done very quietly, and a lot of people are doing it, only that they will not say it. And
in Kenya?
I of course, in Kenya.
Oh, wow.
Of course, I have very many patients who are using donor sperm, who are using donor eggs as well. Okay. And I have also quite a number of patients who are using surrogates. At the moment, I think I have about 5 of them. And last week, just before I came, I left Kenya on Saturday night. I did a C-section on a patient who had, who had carried a baby for somebody, actually twins for somebody else, And the week before that, I've actually, in the last month, I think I've done about 5-6 cesarean sections on surrogates. So it is something which is there. The only problem again is the stigma that comes with it. People don't want to talk about it. The law itself is not very helpful, because what happens is that, according to Kenyan law, the surrogate is actually the mother of that baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you want to use a surrogate, it means that after delivery, you have to get a family lawyer who will actually go to family court and start the process of adoption. So that is something else which actually keeps. We've been fighting for this in the what is called ART bill, Assisted Reproduction Technology bill, which I had the chance of actually being part of the team that came up with it. This is one of the issues that we raised. And unfortunately, it went to this, I think the second reading, it did not go any further. So we were thinking about separating surrogacy, because quite a lot of couples would want to make use of this process. But because we don't have a law which favors them, they sort of, get cold feet and they don't use it. So yes, there is a problem. We are trying to address it. We are trying to talk. There are some groups I know where the ladies, again, as usual, are the ones who are leading, but they actually are bringing their men on board as well. I was invited to one such outing, and actually the men were very happy. They said, at least now here we can talk amongst men about male issues, and I thought that was a good step. The other thing which I can suggest, and which we are trying to do, and I've done a little bit about, is using the church, because I think Kenyans are church-going people,
And the mosque
as well, where they can actually articulate these issues and say, look, there is a problem, and let us use this avenue that is available to discuss these issues.
Now, when you bring up religion, there's a very like now coming from a Muslim background, there's a lot of like the Quran usually has a lot of information on some very small details that people thought they would not have information about. There's a scholar who lives here in the U.S. I think he lives in Tennessee. It's called Yasir Qadhi.
Is that our boy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a topic. He has a conversation on this, which I'm gonna go and listen to, because it talks about like some of these taboo topics.
Yes.
And what actually the Quran says, what the Hadith says. Like what the Prophet did. He has a very interesting way of merging, like those religious texts.
Yes. Very interesting, by the way.
To what's happening today.
Yeah,
And even talking about what certain scholars said and everything. And I think because there's a tendency sometimes in, I'm not going to say in the science community, but people who believe a lot in science to dismiss the faith community.
Yeah.
And there's also this tendency to dismiss that this is women or this is men. And that's why I really like the way you're bringing this, whereby you're not trying to throw blame on people, but we should handle it as a societal issue. Yeah. So I think that would be, especially from the theological perspective. I see people like like my uncles, my aunties, like the older generation. I see this resonating with them so well, rather than having it in an academic setting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rosalind.
Okay.
Yes.
More questions? Pause. Continue.
I do. I got it.
So that's our last question. Do you have any other callers?
We have, but I'm waiting for the caller to confirm.
Okay,
but, we have another caller.
So number is 202-683-4570.
Yes.
Press *5, and it's okay to be anonymous. Even
It's
if
okay.
I ask you for your name and you want to be anonymous, that's okay, because this is a very sensitive
Okay,
topic.
hold on. You wanted to read a comment?
Yes.
Okay,
A
read a
question,
comment,
actually.
a question. So ask that, and then we'll have a question from Black Pearl.
All right.
Uko, you need a pen and paper, sir?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Good.
You're
He's a
smart like that,
doctor.
huh?
This
He's
guy
a
just
doctor.
He's a
he
doctor.
has
And a
no pen.
lecturer.
Oh, by the way, just to let guys know,
Yeah.
this is the first time we've had two doctors on the show.
Yeah,
Brothers.
There's one who's off camera.
There's one who's off
There's one
camera,
who's camera shy.
computer science
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
Then we have a guy who studied in Poland and worked in Brito, which I did. We're gonna.
Yeah.
that-
And for the listeners who are joining us, this is Dr. Kireki Omanwa.
Yes.
And he's an OBGYN and fertility specialist. He's a renowned fertility expert and a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi's Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So this is the person who's talking to us today. Truth.
Studied in Poland, worked in Brito. Right now, he is the man.
His resume is so long.
It's long.
I just had to
Masama, you
pick-
know what?
Yeah.
You sound like Lewis
Yeah, I have to
bragging.
Sound like
pick.
Umesikia hiyo, bro.
Yeah.
Umesikia?
You
Yeah.
sound like Lewis bragging.
But we are bragging on it.
Get to the
Bragging on his behalf.
We are bragging
Yes,
on
we're
his
bragging
behalf.
on his behalf.
We are bragging on
I
his
will
behalf.
say-
What
Doctor,
is?
Doctor has just been giving information.
What is?
That's all.
Omera, what
All right.
is? Okay,
He's-
sawa.
I would say he's very famous. Watch any channel on TV in Kenya and you will find him. Stephen Bakti says surrogacy is a good topic to discuss. Great. Then somebody says in Kenya and Africa, this topic is a societal class. Surrogacy and I think somebody asked
I think there's a story for that.
So I ask, what class are we talking to or about?
Now-
And also, if you don't mind, to clarify. So of course, address that part, but also, are you saying people who don't have the means wanting to do this, and what avenues can we make it easier for them to do that?
And just to piggyback on this issue about cost, because this is one of the things that I
Very
wanted to talk
costly.
about.
Yes.
Fertility treatment is very expensive.
Yes.
I haven't even looked at the pricing, but I can tell you it's a very expensive affair. So
He can tell us. He can tell us.
yeah,
Not necessarily how much he charges, but
like both in Kenya and here.
Yeah.
So maybe what I want you to talk about as far as the cost is concerned
Yeah.
is what is insurable in the Kenyan context and in the American context, if you're familiar, and what has to be paid for out of pocket. And for those people who can't afford it,
Yeah.
you know, like what options do they have?
I think over here, Viola, pause on that question because I
Yes.
think this
Yeah.
guy has been loaded with another serious question.
Yes, cost.
Okay,
Yeah.
but before we get to cost, can I
Yes.
just chime in? I don't know if I can combine these two questions. Like I said, I have so many questions, but mostly based on his previous broadcast.
Yes.
One of them, I think I had posed to you guys. So I told a story about, I know of a couple that was together for a very long time, about 10 or plus years, and then they could not conceive.
Yes.
They were married, they were happily married, and they couldn't conceive. And then as soon as they broke up and went with to marry on other people, they were able to establish individual families, both of them, the man with another woman, the woman with another man.
Yeah.
So is the idea that maybe fertility chemistry for some couples just doesn't exist, even if they're not cheating, they're not playing away matches or whatever?
Zero grazing.
Number one, zero grazing or all that. Number two, the other question being, again, on the previous broadcast, he mentioned that certain things about the diet, such as vitamin C and E and zinc, help to protect the sperm and improve the fertility health of the sperm. So their motility, their strength and everything is okay. Are those the same vitamins that women also need to be able to have in their bodies to be functionally, reproductively functional, or what is the difference between the diet that men need and the diet that women need? So I know that's loaded, but please answer about the myth and the belief that sometimes the tadpole and the bean are just not communicating right, and the diet for the women in relation to the men.
Let me start
Thank you,
with
Alice.
let me start with the question about the couple who were married for 10 years and they were presumably, zero grazing and nothing happened. They broke up and individually they went and had babies with different partners. Yes, it does happen, especially what we call the mucus in the vagina can actually be quote unquote dangerous to the sperm. It can actually stop the sperm from swimming, and that will obviously make this couple infertile. But immediately they separate and they go and have other spouses, and that problem is not there. And hey presto, I have a child, and the gentleman has a child or children, and the lady has a child or children as well. So that one is a well-known phenomenon. They used to do a test, what is called sperm penetration test, very historical, whereby a couple would have intercourse, and then after 2 hours or so, they would get the fluids from the vagina and actually go and examine that under microscope, and then they would see whether the sperms are swimming or they are not swimming. That one is not done these days because it's more historical. We don't do it. But there are other ways of circumventing that problem. If we suspect that is a problem, we can do what is called intrauterine insemination, where we get the gentleman's sperm, we clean it, and then we do a direct, call it a direct injection through the cervix and into the womb.
How do you clean it?
There are special chemicals in the lab. So you're washing a maji at it.
I was going to ask. Uko pale unafua.
That's beyond our knowledge.
It's good to know.
There are special chemicals. Now, the other question that you asked was about about cost.
Cost and yeah.
About
and accessibility. Sorry.
Sorry, say that again.
Okay, so Dr. Omanwa mentioned that vitamin C
Yes,
and E and
yes,
zinc and a
yes.
couple of other things
No
like
problem.
ukikula malenge.
Yeah, yeah,
It helps
Oh,
with
crush
the
seeds,
sperm
yes.
health.
it does.
So the motility, the
Yes.
strength, all of that.
Yeah.
So my
Now-
question was, is this the same situation for the women with the same vitamins, or
Yes.
is there a different level of needs in terms of vitamins and things that women should eat to help with their ovaries and all
Yeah.
that, the eggs to be able to, you know,
Yeah.
for their reproductive health, basically.
That is all right. Now, in terms of diet, obviously, eating a nutritious diet is imperative and it is important when it comes to matters fertility. For the men, there are things which are specific. What we are looking for selenium, for example, foods which are rich in zinc. Vitamin E is very important. Vitamin C is also very important, what we call antioxidants. For example, L-arginine is also very important because this goes into, let's call it into the whole factory of producing sperm. Sometimes even vitamin D, more in the women than actually in the men. You may find that there are some tablets which have all of this, but in different proportions, and there are specific proportions which we will need for this. When it comes to the females, we need more of vitamin E, vitamin D, and sometimes some of the foods that we eat. In the men, we know that pumpkin seeds have a lot of magnesium, have a lot of zinc, have a lot of selenium. Flax seeds have a lot of L-arginine and so on. So it can be different, even though if a lady used the flax seeds and maca, there are different types of maca and so on, to try and enhance the fertility would not be a problem. The only issue is, Viola, in order for me to tell you that 100%, if you take maca for the ladies, for example, and flax seeds combined, they will increase your fertility by X%. That one I cannot be able to tell you. Why? Because there are no studies which have been done. And when you talk about studies, we are looking about randomized controlled studies, whereby X number of women have been given maca. A group of women have been given maca with flax seeds and so on, and then we need to check what are their fertility rates and what are we looking at in terms of fertility rates. Are we looking at what you call antral follicle count? Are we looking at their hormone levels and so on? So that one is a little bit of a difficult experiment to do, but it is just generally accepted that some of these seeds that grow naturally, yes, can help in terms of fertility. Coming back to the questions Ruth and Ali asked about the issue of cost of surrogacy and cost of treatment.
Yes.
What treatment is actually insured or can be paid by the insurance. I'll start with the second question of insurance. Unfortunately, in Kenya, when it comes to treatment of infertility, it is not insured. You have to pay through your pocket.
Out of pocket.
Which I
100%.
Which I think is discrimination. It is not fair and it is not right. This is 2022. From 2016, 2017, I think, to 2019, NHIF used to pay for treatment of infertility, especially IVF, for government workers only.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if you're a civil servant, you are in the police, you're in the army, civil servants. The army is completely different, has a different system. The government actually paid for it. And then they stopped in 2019. I think 2019, towards the end of 2019. So from then till now, it is not being taken care of. Talking about cost, unfortunately, most of these, remember you talked about the 20% of infertility?
Yeah.
Most of them are at the bottom of the pyramid. I work in Kenyatta National Hospital, and we have clinics every day except Friday, where they have an oncology clinic. And we see about 10, 11, 12 cases of infertility almost every day.
Wow.
Every day.
Okay.
Most of these ladies that we see are ladies who are young and who do some, laborer jobs. So even if they earn 15K or 20K a month, they will not be able in their lifetime to be able to afford to have treatment of IVF, for example.
Yeah.
IVF costs about anywhere between 450, sometimes to 600,000 shillings per cycle. And in IVF, when you talk about treatment of IVF, is where we inject the patient with medications every day for about 10 to 14 days. And then we harvest, quote unquote, we harvest the eggs through the vagina, and the husband gives us sperm. We clean it, and then we take the best sperm and create a baby, create an embryo outside, and then later on transfer it.
And when you say for 50K to 600K per cycle, does it mean that this has to be done in multiple cycles?
Or sometimes you may have to do several cycles.
Yeah. And but again, what several? Is it like 5, 10?
It again all depends.
So it's just very expensive.
It is expensive. Okay. So if you are younger, where younger we mean maybe you are in mid-20s, 30s, before 35, where naturally you will produce more eggs. So we'll create more embryos and we won't transfer all of them. We will freeze the others for future use. Then it becomes a little bit cheaper in the sense that the following subsequent cycles, it doesn't cost 400, that between 450 and 600. It may cost about 200, 250 for what we call a frozen embryo cycle treatment. Okay. Now, in the US. In the
US, yes. That's what I wanted to ask you.
In the US is very expensive as well. Costs anywhere between 15, sometimes even up to 20, up to $30,000 per cycle.
That is according to Shady Grove Fertility, by the way.
Shady Grove, because I know Shady Grove is known for that.
Clinic, yes.
Now, are there some insurance companies that pay for this? Yes, there are some. I don't know, but I have read, in literature that there are some companies which actually take very good care of their patients, and they actually cater for IVF treatment. Not many, but they're there. But by and large, this is something which you have to pay out of pocket.
So you're better off, even going back to Kenya to try and do this in Kenya.
Of course, it makes economic sense.
And going back and seeing Dr. Omanwa.
Karibu sana. Then the other thing is that apart from creating those embryos, there is a freezing phase. And then later on, if you, for example, left, like I see some patients come and they say, I went to India, I did a cycle there, whatever it is. So if it didn't work and you want to do another cycle using the embryos that were frozen, remember they were frozen in India, for example. So you have to go there, say for about a month. There are costs, traveling costs, accommodation, etc., plus the process itself. So the whole costs end up becoming extremely expensive. Yeah. But if you do it at home, you don't have to accommodation uko mahali ambapo uko. There are no transport fees, etc. So it's a lot cheaper at home.
Okay.
So just sorry.
Sorry.
How long can you store the eggs?
How long can we freeze the eggs? We can freeze the eggs, we can freeze sperm, we can freeze the embryos. We can freeze them for 5 years, 10 years if you want. I think 2 years ago, there was a case report which was reported where an embryo was frozen for 21 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was thawed, transferred into a lady, and she delivered a baby boy. After 21 years
now,
freezing.
and just staying on this cost issue, because this is a very big, it's a very big deal when it comes to, routine medical care and even specialized medical care like this. So there's clearly those people that you're dealing with at Kenyatta National Hospital who definitely will never be able to afford this. Now, traditionally, there were certain, unaambiwa kula matunda fulani ama tumia sijui mwarubaini ama tumia nini
muganga.
There are some traditional there's certain traditional remedies which I think are controversial in the sense that sometimes people who've studied a lot of Western medicine look down upon them, but we also have to remember that Western medicine is fairly new to most people in Kenya. When you look historically, there are people, who as recently as even as the 80s, never had hospitals. They had their own cures. They had their own ways of doing things, and there were certain things that were working.
Yes.
So are there any natural traditional substances that you could maybe recommend to people who definitely know they have this problem, but they can't afford it?
Now, even before going to the recommendation of a herbal medicine, by the way, herbal medicine is something which we have not done enough research into. Today, I was reading a newspaper, and there is a tree called Prunus africanus, which is actually which actually treats many things, and one of those things that it treats is cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is known.
Yeah.
Now, what people have done is that they have harvested the bark, they harvest it, they send it to other countries where it is processed, and then it's sent back.
Oh.
So what one lady has decided to do, especially in the Aberdare region, Nyandarua region, is that she has been harvesting the seedlings of these Prunus africanus, and she's actually encouraging farmers to plant these trees, which is fantastic, because these are some of the avenues which we are not exploiting because we don't know them. Coming back to infertility and the issues of herbal medications, I have no issue with that at all. The only problem is that some of these aunties, when patients go home, they say, my auntie told me, anakupatia kibuyu kimeja. Enda unakunywa glass moja kila siku. Now, which type of glass? Because if I take this glass and I take another glass, they are different in terms of quantity.
Yeah.
That notwithstanding, we do not know what is the chemical structure that is actually in that concoction. How does it work? What is the half-life? Does it produce any side effects? What is the quantity that is actually active in that glass, and so on? So when patients come to me and tell me that they're using, or they've been using herbal medication, I don't have a problem with that. I only tell them, I wish we knew exactly what is there, what is the active ingredient, how it acts, and so on. So more research is actually needed into that. Because I have not studied herbal medicine, I cannot tell anybody that enda ukunywe mwarobaini ama ukunywe sijui hii na itakusaidia.
Okay.
So I have no problem with that. The only thing is that let's take a step back, because you don't know what is there. Let us use what we know first. If the herbal can be complementary, that is also okay.
Okay.
Now,
Uno.
we have a few comments.
Yes.
Thank you, Viola. But I think we also have another caller. I'm waiting for him to call.
Okay.
Well, he's gonna call, but you read some of the comments.
I'm gonna read some of these
Yes.
comments and some of the questions we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm gonna read all of them. So, does a good doctor absolutely see a role that psychologists can play in infertility? In Kenya, is there any psychological care given to individuals who are infertile and seeking ART avenues to conceive? That's one. Asante sana Rosie for your question. To Daktari, very interesting ones. Glad that you're doing okay. Is it true that some women, that some men's sperm, actually maybe make it general, men's sperm can throw off the pH of a woman's vagina? And how is that related to yeast infection and BV? The other one is, atawambia BV ni nini? Most of us know this procedure is based on
vaginosis.
I can't even pronounce it, but thank you. What are the legalities, environment, including the procedural cost? I think, Elolota, can you please clarify that? Then he goes on to say, hii ni mambo ya watu wa Runda, the people are able to afford.
No, but that's true.
That's
unfortunately.
True. Kindly touch on this topic. It's about the trackers. I think Diaspora is talking to...
No, Diaspora had a question, which was the trackers in the United States don't sit on the engines. They're separated from the operators, as opposed to the trucks in Europe and the rest of the world. But they have issues with food and other challenges. So I guess, it was just back to that question of the trackers.
Then Slay says, I switched to taking herbal supplements. To my surprise, my periods became regular. But before this, it was so irregular. Slay, would be nice if you can tell us what herbal supplements you're taking.
So we start with which question?
We start with, I know that too many. Let's start with the pH.
Yes.
And then we'll go to the psychologist.
Okay. Now.
Hold on.
In addition to Slay's question, and then I'll get off the line because I have a boatload. Daktari mentioned elevated levels of androgens, which also lead to high skin sensitivity and low egg quality in women. So I just want to know what treatments are available for those women who struggle with that issue. And I just wanted to also mention that my grandmother, who is 100 plus years old, she's really sick right now. She was a village midwife, and she gave me a herbal supplement one time for my very, very painful periods. And I'd like to mention that worked. But that's a story for another day. And lastly, and I promise I'm getting off the phone, Ruth Kilungu.
Yes.
Ile mambo ya pombe na Wakenya is a real deal. 1 liter is nothing. Yeah. If you doubt me, ask one Mike. Anajua story yetu. Kwaherini.
Okay.
And thank you, Dr. Omanwa.
I think
so
that needs
much
another
great
episode.
information.
Yeah. I think that needs another episode. But doctor,
Carry on, sir.
Okay.
PH psychologist.
PH psychologist. Okay. With the psychologists, absolutely. Actually, we need to have these psychologists because, first of all, the process itself is very emotional for the ladies most of the time. The men, we are removed because we are not the ones getting the injections. We are not the ones being taken to theater for egg collections. We are not the ones, having a transfer done. We are not the ones who are saying, Allah, the test is negative. Sawa sawa. So it's, I think it's very important. Do we have psychologists who do this? There are few of them. And are there psychologists in every clinic? No, there are no psychologists in every clinic. Even in the UK where I worked, there were no psychologists in every clinic. The psychologists would come in when we were doing an embryo transfer from, let's say, donated embryos or a surrogate. Then the psychologist actually came in and did an assessment. Okay, so yes, there is a lot of room for improvement in that respect. The issue of pH is there sometimes some men who can throw, quote unquote, throw off the pH in the vagina. God has created it in a very wonderful way, in the sense that in the vagina the pH is acidic, very acidic. The pH in sperm is actually alkaline. When they meet, it becomes neutral. So that the sperm can be able to swim and get to where it does. Now, yes, it does happen that some ladies, after having intercourse, they do actually have some infection. And I've met a patient who, every time she had intercourse with her partner, had a bladder infection. So I don't know whether that was something which was specific to this lady, or it is something which can happen, in other ladies as well. Sometimes it can happen because if the guy has an infection and comes and has intercourse with his partner, that can aggravate actually the infection in the vagina. So yes, it can happen that way.
Okay.